If you're a seller and you listed your home during the month of December and you have Christmas decorations up, I would highly recommend that you demand of your agent to reshoot your house. There is nothing tackier than having a listing in January and February that have Christmas photos or have photos of Christmas decorations in them. I'm Danny Brown. I'm the CEO of Myriad Real Estate Group, and this is going to be our January 2025 market update. So we are officially in a new year. I am filming this in the past, so it's still last year, but wanted to touch base and let you know kind of where the market is today and where we are going to head into 2025. So as we round out the year, we are actually back in the greater Phoenix area, back to pre-pandemic levels in terms of listing inventory, which is really great news. That means that buyers have a lot more choices when it comes to shopping for a home. So we always want inventory, there to be enough inventory, because that will keep home values in line, and we're not going to see this massive run up like we did during the pandemic. Arizona is only one of 10 states where we're back to pre-pandemic levels. So this is where real estate is really important for working with local area experts, because not everything is the same. So some states are still really low in terms of their overall inventory. Some areas have more inventory, like Austin, Florida. They have more listings than they did going into the pandemic. We're back to just basically pre-pandemic levels, and more listings and more choices for buyers is a good thing. I've had a lot of comments on the Fed last week. Again, we're recording this at the end of December. Came out and they cut the federal funds rate by another 25 basis points, the last cut of 2024. And what ended up happening is mortgage rates went up again. So the last time they cut, mortgage rates went up, and this time they cut, mortgage rates went up again, which is really counterintuitive to what most people think, like, oh, the Fed cut rates, mortgage rates are now lower. That's not how it works. So what they did is they cut the federal funds rate, which is what banks lend to each other, and then he came out and talked about what 2025 is going to look like. The market was expecting 3 or 4 more rate cuts in 2025. He basically came out and said we might get 2. So they're being very cautious. And he does not want to back himself into a corner or state that they're going to do more rate cuts than they actually end up doing, and they want to be data dependent, which they have been this entire time. So because he came out and said that we're only going to potentially do 2 rate cuts in 2025, mortgage rates went up because the 10-year Treasury went up. So always remember that mortgage rates are based on what the 10-year Treasury does, not what the federal funds rate is. Where we're at right now is mortgage rates are in the mid to high 6s. Prior to this conversation, we were in the mid to low 6s. So the good news is the spread between the 10-year Treasury and mortgage rates has narrowed significantly. If we were having these conversations this time last year, rates would be, pushing north of 7% into almost 8% territory. But because that spread is narrowed so much, we're having less and less volatility in the mortgage rate environment. So even though the 10-year went up, the effect on mortgage rates was a lot less than it could have been, because that spread between the two has narrowed so much. If you are a seller, like I said, inventory is up in the greater Phoenix area, and I do think that we're going to see even more inventory after the first of the year. I'm a very small sample size, but I already have quite a few sellers that are waiting to list after the first of the year, get through the holidays. I've even had some sellers who have canceled during the Thanksgiving to Christmas timeframe that plan on relisting after the first of the year as well. So I have to imagine, just based on our typical seasonality, that we are going to see a lot more people listing their homes after the first of the year, probably starting in mid-January, and that usually runs through the spring, with the most listings coming on the market in that April-May timeframe. So I think that we're going to be getting back into our greater Phoenix seasonality with a lot more activity starting in that post-holiday, early January timeframe, really running through the spring. Be open to negotiations, have realistic expectations. You're not going to get everything you want, and if you're in an environment where you have to get every last dollar and sell for the absolute most you possibly can, this might not be the market for you because buyers have a lot more negotiating power than they did. So if you're a buyer, the good news is you have options. And I've stated this in, I think, my last 2 videos that we are in a buyer's market. We are still in a buyer's market. That does seem to shift as rates get closer to 6%. So every time we've seen rates hover and get close to that 6% threshold, we see an increase in demand. We see more purchase applications, which means more people are applying for mortgages. So as a buyer, you have the most buying power and negotiating power when rates are above 6%. And I think that negotiating power will disappear as you get closer to 6%. So that's kind of that line in the sand where there's going to be a lot more competition and a lot more buyer activity when rates are closer to 6%. So if you are a buyer, the good news is you have a lot of choices. And because rates are north of 6.5%, you also have a lot of negotiating power when it comes to the sellers. If you're selling your home to upgrade, remember that you're entering into that same market. So if you're selling your lower priced home to buy a more expensive home, you can negotiate just as hard, if not harder, in that higher price point, and you're actually making money. Hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. Happy 2025, and look forward to continuing giving you market updates on the greater Phoenix area. Don't forget to give a like and subscribe, and we will see you next month.